Zechariah chapter 3. And he showed me Yahushua, right? They wrote it like that because of the first change they did to the name. But we have it here, as you can see, Yahushua. Now, interestingly enough, we have this word right here, which has no translation to any language nowadays, but is pointing to Yahushua. Um, so it's like saying, well, yeah, just pointing the the one to whom the verse is speaking, but it's very interesting that is formed by the first and the last letter of the alphabet, the Aleph Tav. As we know, Yahushua is the Aleph Tav. Yahushua, Yahweh himself, is the first and last. So by saying here, and I saw, right? Well, and he showed me Yahushua, the high priest. So he made me see Yahushua. We could say he made me see the first and last Yahushua. So this Yahushua in this book represents both the first and last. All right. Now, this Yahushua appears in the book of Ezra, Nehemiah, and other places mentioned as Yeshua. So his original name was Yeshua. All right. But in this book, his name is changed to Yahushua, so that we would know that the name of the Messiah would be Yahushua. Now, a lot of people claim that the name of the Messiah in Hebrew is Yeshua. But if that was the case, then why would this person's name be changed for this revelation, for this chapter? Right? So that shows that the actual name is this, the name of the Messiah. And that's why he was given this special name for this book. So, and he showed me at Yahushua, HaKohen Hagadol, the high priest. As we know, Yahushua is the high priest. In this case, this person was the high priest of the moment, so that was perfect for the revelation. For there was a high priest named Yeshua, so so Yahweh said, let us call him Yahushua to give the revelation about the coming of the true Kohen Gadol, the high priest according to the order of Melchizedek. So this chapter is very powerful. So um, let's go verse by verse, as always, explaining each part. So, and he showed me Yahushua. I repeat, which is very important. This is one of the parts in the Tanakh where we see the revelation of the name of the Messiah given to us, who is the high priest. So, and he showed me Yahushua, the high priest, standing before the messenger of Yahweh, and Satan standing at his right hand to be an adversary to him. Okay, so powerful for many reasons. Now, first of all, remember I already mentioned et Yahushua, first and last Yahushua. As we know, the Messiah, Yahushua, came through a virgin and never sinned, so he died without sin, and that was the way that his blood could pay for the sin of humanity, because sin came through one man and left through one man. First Adam and then the last Adam, Yahushua. So Yahushua has no sin. So Satan cannot accuse him of anything, right? That is key to understand. However, the last comes as the prodigal son. The story of the prodigal son is a representation of the first and last. The story that reveals that there will be two manifestations of the Father, and one would be without sin. The other one would be through error. For the first represents the tree of life, the last represents the tree of knowledge of good and evil. So he had to experience it. And that is why there is an adversary, Satan, accusing him. Now, the fact that he's standing at his right hand is because pretty much Yahushua, the high priest, is standing before Yahweh. That is the idea. And Yahweh has Satan on his left hand, which would be on the right hand of the one who is being accused. All right? So hope that's understood. And he showed me Yahushua, the high priest, standing before the messenger of Yahweh, and Satan standing at his right hand to be an adversary to him. That's verse 1. It says, standing before the Malach of Yahweh, Behasatan, and Hasatan standing at his right hand to be an adversary. A Satan, lesidnu, lesidno, to be an adversary. And Yahweh said to Satan, Yahweh rebuke you, Satan, right? Satan, Yahweh, who has chosen Jerusalem, rebuke you. This is very interesting. I always like this verse and to mention this because as we know, Yahweh is speaking through his messenger, the Malach of Yahweh. And when the Malach of Yahweh gives a word, he speaks as Yahweh himself for his messenger. However, when it comes to rebuking Satan, he doesn't say it in the first person. For that, he goes to the third person and says, Yahweh rebuke you, Satan. Right? Which is kind of like what we see in the New Covenant when we were told by Peter of how Michael does not rebuke Satan directly or does not curse Satan, but instead gives all authority to Yahweh, for they are both messengers. But Satan is the adversary. So here we have that it says, and Yahweh said to Satan, Yahweh rebuke you, right? That seems to not have much sense. Like if you're speaking to someone, then you speak of yourself in the third person when rebuking that someone. And that is because there is a messenger in the middle. So the messenger wants to make clear that the rebuke comes from Yahweh, not himself as the angel, which would be similar in position. And Yahweh said to Satan, Yahweh rebuke you, Satan. Yahweh who has chosen Jerusalem rebuke you. Is this not a brand plucked from the fire? So it's talking about Yahushua. And like I said, the fact that Yahushua, the Messiah, did not sin, then makes it clear that this is talking about the second manifestation of Yahweh on this earth as the prodigal son. And Satan is accusing him, but Yahweh is defending him. And thankfully, because now Yahushua already came and resurrected and is at the right hand of the Father as the high priest defending us, right? So Michael has the position in this chapter that Yahushua has at the right hand of the Father. And this Yahushua, the high priest mentioned here, is representing the last on earth, the prodigal son. So, and Yahweh said to Satan, Yahweh rebuke you, Satan. Yahweh who has chosen Jerusalem rebuke you. Is this not a brand plucked from the fire? So it's pretty much saying, is this not a person that was going to hell? Right? This is a person that was getting lost, but Yahweh took him out of the fire. Yahweh saved him. And the only way to save someone is if Yahweh forgives that someone. And that's why Yahushua brought salvation through the forgiveness of sins. So it is through what Yahushua did that the last is able to be forgiven so that he can be plucked from the fire. And an interesting idea that I always have when I see this verse is that if he is a brand plucked from the fire, he is on fire. And now Yahweh can use that fire for his will, like to light up this world, right? So in a way, if we think it that way, he needed to go into the fire. He needed to go, in error, so that then that error that he came to know could be used against the enemy to destroy the enemy, to get rid of error itself. So he brings the fire to destroy the world that leads people to the fire, right? So that's why the last comes as the consuming fire, while Mashiach came as the water of life. Also, we could say that if he is a brand plucked from the fire, Yahushua as the water can stop that fire, of course. And Yahushua was dressed in filthy garments. Once again, to me, this is an amazing prophecy for many reasons. And it is interesting to read this. Yahushua was dressed in filthy garments because we know Yahushua has no sin. He is the true garment that we need for the next life. So by saying this, we understand that is talking about, I repeat, the last of the prodigal son coming in a different body, which has to go through what everybody goes through in this reality, which is sin, and that's why it's filthy, his garment. And Yahushua was dressed in filthy garments and was standing before the messenger. And he answered and spoke to those who stood before him. And he answered and spoke to those who stood before him, saying, remove the filthy garments from him. And to him he said, see, I have removed your guilt from you, and shall put costly robes on you. This is beautiful, right? So the Malach gives order to take away those filthy garments. Like when we accept Mashiach and our sins are taken from us. And to him he said, see, I have removed your guilt from you. This is beautiful because then we know that filthy garments represent guilt, right? And those filthy garments were the guilt of sin. But Yahweh is forgiving those sins and taking away the garments, the filthy garments, so that the guilt can go away. And in that way, the accuser cannot accuse. See, I have removed your guilt from you and shall put costly robes on you. That is verse 4. So, and I said, let them put a clean turban on his head. Then they put a clean turban on his head, and they put garments on him. And the messenger of Yahweh stood by. And the messenger of Yahweh witnessed to Yahushua, saying, thus said Yahweh of hosts, if you walk in my ways, and if you guard my duty, then you shall also rule my house. This is an amazing word. Imagine. Obviously, it refers to Yahushua, the high priest of the moment. Yahweh speaking to him, telling him that he will lead the temple, everything in the temple of Yahweh that would be built later on. But spiritually or prophetically, it's talking about how the last, through Yahushua, the Kohen Gadol in the heavens, is forgiven and given authority so that he can rule over creation. And remember also that something very similar is said to Moshe about ruling his house, like the gatekeeper. And remember also that Yahushua is the gate. So the last comes to bring the testimony of Mashiach, meaning to show the gate so that others can enter. So then you shall also rule my house and also guard my courts, and I shall give you access among these standing here. That is interesting because that is kind of like saying, and I will give you a place among the Malachim, right? And we know that the chosen few will be like Malachim. The last is actually Mikael. And like I said, Mikael right there is acting as Yahushua is acting right now. And I mean Mashiach, our Savior. While Yahushua represents the last, the second manifestation. And he says, now listen, Yahushua, the high priest, you and your companions who sit before you, for they are men of symbol. For look, I am bringing forth my servant, the branch. So this confirms the whole thing that I've been saying, because remember that Yahushua HaMashiach asked the Pharisees, whose son is the Messiah? And they said, David. But then Yahushua told them, how can David be the father of Messiah if David himself calls him sovereign? Right? When in Psalm 110, David said, Yahweh said to my sovereign, sit at my right hand until I place your enemies as your footstool. Yahushua went up already to the right hand. So now Yahweh must manifest again as the branch, for Yahushua is the root of David. The last is the branch, root and branch, as we see also prophesied in Isaiah 11. So first and last, root and branch. So here we see that it is confirming that the name Yahushua is the name of the Messiah, and that this one that is being mentioned here represents the second manifestation. Now listen, Yahushua the high priest, you and your companions who sit before you, which would be like the Talmidim of Mashiach, or the chosen few that would be with the last. For they are men of symbols. So you see how the Ruach is telling ZecharYah and Yahushua of the moment that they were a representation of something else, something bigger. They were a symbol of something that would come about. So, for look, I am bringing forth my servant, the branch. You see how it says, or sprout, Isaiah 4:2, Isaiah 11:1, Jeremiah 23:5, Jeremiah 33:15, Zechariah 6:12. The branch represents Yahushua, the second manifestation, while Yahushua is the root. The branch cannot come unless there is a root, and that's why Mashiach came as the seed that needed to be buried, so killed and buried, so that there would be a tree, the branch, and the fruit. So the last comes to harvest the fruit, for he is the branch. And let me see this verse in Hebrew. Listen now, Yahushua, HaKohen Hagadol, Ata, you and your friends who sit before you, because they are men, it says Mofit, which would be symbol. Behold, it says, because I am bringing my servant. And it's interesting that it says my servant. It doesn't say my son, right? Remember that the first came as the son straight from heaven. That's why through a virgin. The last comes as a regular person who becomes a son through Yahushua. Just like everybody else needs to become a child of Yahweh through the name of Yahushua, as we see in the book of John 1:12. So I am bringing my servant, Semach, the branch. Now, the first letter is a righteous person, a tzaddik. The middle letter is the water of life, the 40 years, the 40 jubilees, the fountain of water, also the letter, obviously, of Mashiach, the first. And then the letter Het, which we already saw as the fence, wall, etc. Semach, that is the branch. And it's also, I find it kind of a little bit funny, just a little bit, that the Jewish people, they reject and hate Yahushua HaMashiach, right? And we see here, and his name is Yahushua, etc., right? The Jewish people, you see how it's saying, now listen, Yahushua the high priest, you and your companions who sit before you, for they are men of symbol, for look, I am bringing forth my servant, the branch. And I think I'm gonna, just to say this, I'm gonna have to go to this Zechariah Zechariah 6:12. So a little bit of a spoiler real quick. And shall speak to him. Okay. And you shall take the silver and gold, make a crown, and set it on the head of Yahushua, the son of Yahutzadak, the high priest. And shall speak to him, saying, thus said Yahweh of hosts, saying, see, the man, listen to this because I find it amazing. See, the man whose name is the branch. All right, so earlier he said, I'm sending the branch. And now he's saying, this man has the name of the branch, right? Because saying, see, the man whose name is the branch. So is that understood? It's saying that this name, Yahushua, but obviously with the Yahushua would be the name that we needed to remember. The man whose name, right? We needed to remember the name of Yahushua. But the Jewish, they say that the name of the Messiah, according to this prophecy, would be the branch. So they say, some of them, there's a doctrine that says that the name of the Messiah would be Tzemach because of this prophecy. Not understanding that Zechariah is saying the name of this high priest, Yahushua, is the name you need to remember, for that's how the branch would come. No, instead they say, oh, so the man whose name is the branch. So they're saying, oh, the name of the Messiah is the branch. The name of the Messiah is Tzemach. So they're waiting for somebody to come and say, my name is Tzemach. How you doing? Right? And even if he had come in that name, they would have rejected. So going back, for look, I am bringing forth my servant, the branch. Remember that Yahushua is written with two, can be written in two ways. Yahushua or Yahushua. These two versions of the name appear in scriptures with one vav, like that, and with two, which is like, I just had it. So this letter represents a man, because he was, the man was made in the sixth day, and that is the numerical value 6, and it is a man standing up. So with one vav represents the first manifestation of Yahweh as a man. With two represents the second manifestation of Yahweh as a man. One in each half of the name. Yahu, for the first was the manifestation of Yahweh in the flesh, the first and most clear or pure one as the image. And then the one who comes to give testimony of Mashiach for the salvation, Shua, to manifest. The last comes as the fire, which is the letter Shin. From the nations, as the Son of Man. Yahushua came as the arm to bring revelation through his sacrifice. If we separate the name, I mean. So going back here. Now listen, Yahushua, the high priest, you and your companions who sit before you, for they are men of symbol. For look, I am bringing forth my servant, the branch. See the stone which I have put before Yahushua. See the stone which I have put before Yahushua. It's talking about Yahushua as the branch. So who would that stone be? Right? The cornerstone which the builders rejected. The priests, the Pharisees, and all of them who rejected Yahushua the Messiah and killed him, making him the stone, the cornerstone for the building, the foundation stone for his life, his teaching is the doctrine. So see the stone, that will be Yahushua the Messiah who came 2,000 years ago, which I have put before Yahushua. That's why he came 2,000 years ago. He came before the branch as the root. See the stone which I have put before Yahushua. On one stone are 7 eyes. Yahushua, who received all knowledge. He can see all. 7 represents completion. He knows all. He sees all by the power given to him, or through the power given to him by Yahweh. On one stone are 7 eyes. Also, like the 7 congregations, the menorah, 7 lights, like the eye is the lamp of the body. On one stone are 7 eyes. See, I am engraving its inscription, declares Yahweh of hosts, and I shall remove the guilt of that land in one day. Yahushua the Messiah came as the cornerstone which the builders rejected, and by rejecting him and killing him, he became the cornerstone. And not only that, he removed guilt from the land. He removed sin from the world. And I shall remove the guilt of that land in one day. In the day in which he died, the forgiveness of sins came. But there's still sin in the world. So that means that moment there was a manifestation spiritually through Yahushua, but the physical manifestation or the clear manifestation of it will be during the coming of the last and the millennium, right? The 1,000 years, the Shabbat. So in one day through Mashiach, and one day through the last, for the spiritual and the physical to manifest. And I shall remove the guilt of that land in one day. In that day, declares Yahweh of hosts, you shall invite one another under the vine and under the fig tree. Remember, like I said, Israel represents or is represented by the vine, Yahudah by the fig tree, the 2 parts of the people of Israel, which represent the many and the few. Yahushua said, I am the vine, and he came for the lost tribes of Israel. And he gave his blood, and he said, this is the blood of the new covenant, which is shed for the many. So the vine are the many, Israel, Yahushua, his blood. For Yahushua is the tree of life. The blood of the grape is the wine, which represents the blood. So Yahushua is the vine, the tree of life, the first who came for his people. The fig tree represents the tree of knowledge, the last, who comes as a prodigal son, filthy robes, then gets changed. So the fig tree represents the tree of knowledge, Yahudah, the chosen few. And like I was saying, by mentioning the branch in this chapter, it makes reference, not directly though, to a root, because for a branch to exist, there has to be a root. Yahushua came as the root, the last comes as the branch. First and last, the vine, the fig tree. So that's why after mentioning, and I shall remove the guilt of that land in one day, which, like I said, happened spiritually through Yahushua, and it will happen physically or literally through the last, then, yeah, that day we'll celebrate. um, then it is when we shall invite one another under the vine and under the fig tree, which in the simple sense of it means everybody will have their own land, their own trees. Everybody will be able to invite others to rejoice and feast and whatever, because everybody will have everything they need and want. So that will manifest during the 1,000 years, the Shabbat, the millennium, when the first and last have manifested for the vine and the fig tree, the many and the few. So I hope that's clear. And that's how that chapter ends.